In this section, we'll be discussing the platform APIs, the JFrog CLI, AQL, also known as the Artifactory Query Language, and CI integrations. Let's talk about APIs first. Our entire product, the entire JFrog platform, non-dependent on which version you're using, uses APIs. Our UI, in fact, is just simply an interface on top of our API. And the APIs in our product allow you to do things like build automation, deploying or downloading artifacts, allows you to do search capabilities with inside it. You can do cleanup, you can do controls and governance, and also to any sort of operation you do in the user interface. Of course, you could do it in our API. Our APIs are extremely documented in our wiki, so please go to our wiki if you need more additional information on that. But one of the things about it is that we use, like, for build server tool integration, we use our REST APIs. You can use things like curl, or if you want to use something like Podman, you can interact with it there. On top of that, it helps with advanced automation, and we'll talk about something called the Artifactory Query Language, which you can use in conjunction with the API to perform a lot of these tasks. It's a simple JSON REST interface, so just like every other API that's out there. On top of that, you can actually set permissions on this, and it also can be anonymous if you wanted to, but we don't recommend it. So please refer to our users groups and permissions and stuff that we talked about in earlier ones. And it's also fully documented and maintained. But as stated, everything in our product can be done via the API to help you go ahead and automate as much as possible. This includes things like builds and artifacts and storage, search queries, security, repositories, information, creation, you name it. Also configurations. We have plugins. We have a thing called workers that's we've just announced that'll be coming out that you can utilize also. Import, export, and much more. There's tons of information online about our REST API and how you can use it. We also have in our GitHub, which is just JFrog in GitHub, lots of examples that are around this also. The platform API also extends to X-ray, or advanced security, curation, pipelines, and distribution. So anything you can automate in our platform can be done via the API. As I stated before, when you think about our products, think about our products as being a base foundation for you to do everything you need to do, and the APIs are a way for you to interface with that. Now, our APIs also use things like access tokens, which we talked about before in our permission models, to go ahead and interact with it. But if you don't want to use our API and you'd like to use something else, you can also use our JFrog CLI. And our JFrog CLI is amazing. It's an open source and it's maintained by us. It was written in Golang. It sits on top of the API interface. It's extremely small, extremely compact, and extremely efficient. One of the nice features of it is it actually has built in our ability to do checksum-based manipulation. So in other words, if you upload an artifact, it will actually only upload things that are already inside, that aren't inside of Artifactory. It is checksum-based aware. Which means also, too, you could also do multiple threading. So if you're using larger files or you have multiple files coming down, on top of that, you can use our dry run mode to go ahead and simulate. So this way you can go ahead and pretend to do something, or you want to practice, or you actually want to go ahead and write something very complex. You can do it without disturbing the data. This, by the way, also translates also into our REST API also. Get back your results, go ahead and manipulate the way you're actually doing the query, and then go ahead and execute it so that it's actually being done. It supports also multiple configurations. One of the nice features of this is you can store, if you have more than one Artifactory in there, you can actually specify which Artifactory or which platform instance you want to connect to, or we call JPD as the JFrog deployment. On top of that, it uses authentication, and you can also use regular expressions, wildcards, and then we have a thing called file spec. File spec is a way for you to, instead of having a lot of additional parameters that you can do, you can actually create a spec file. There's information on our website about how to create a file spec and utilize that as opposed to actually putting a ton of parameters. It's a little easier to maintain. You can download it. It can run anywhere. You can download it via Mac, Windows, whatever. You can use Homebrew, Debian. Many different ways to do this. All you have to simply do is just go to our JFrog CLI download page. Once you've downloaded it, we have excellent information on how you can utilize the JFrog CLI to connect to the various parts of the platform. It has different commands for each one of the different types of the pieces of our platform that you're utilizing. On top of that, you can specify options, also to command arguments such as If you want to do things like recursively or regular expression, or you want to have multiple threads, things like that. And then you can add, of course, arguments at the end. It's a very, very powerful tool. It's one of my favorite tools to utilize and allows you to perform a lot of information. Also, too, you can also use our JFrog CLI when you're using things like our security product, X-Ray and Advanced Security, to perform operations such as audit, where you can actually scan things locally on your desktop utilizing the JFrog CLI. This is very helpful around things like Python and NPM, where as a developer, you might want to know, is there static code analysis components that I need to look at? Are there any sort of CVEs that I need to be aware of with the libraries I'm using? And if you use our advanced security, whether they're applicable or not. The thing is the JFrog CLI allows you to have advanced configuration options around this too. It's a great way to actually interact with the platform, especially if you're somebody who lives in a shell or a PowerShell. I always encourage customers to go ahead and look at our JFrog CLI as a great way to interface. And one of the best parts about it is that you can use your identity token that you generate in the UI, which we discussed before, as a way to connect and authenticate. And what's nice is that once you've authenticated, it keeps that session data, so this way you can run all the commands you want without having to go in and actually re-authenticate again, because you've already been authenticated. The Artifactory query language is the next portion we're going to talk about, which is an extension of the API and an extension of the CLI. The Artifactory query language is a nice way for you to write complex queries to do things such as looking or sorting or filtering out any libraries or binaries that might be stored in Artifactory. It's a very simple format. It's very JSON-like. It's pretty close as to JSON as possible. It actually is optimized, so this way our product recognizes this is an AQL query and creates a series of complex requests into our database to get back the metadata, as we talked about before with our checksum-based approach. And at the same time, it's very universal in its aspect. But the thing is with AQL, it allows you to look at items, allows you to look at builds as entries and promotions and releases. There's lots of things you can do. I encourage our customers to go ahead and look at the AQL formatting, because you can utilize it as a way to even improve the way you build things. The metadata that you're storing in Artifactory is accessible and queryable and searchable. And AQL is a nice way for you to do this, especially if you're looking at very complex queries, maybe between mixed entities. The next piece we're going to talk about is CI integration. This is a very essential part. It's a very core component of one of the major reasons on why we exist as a company. And what this does is it allows customers to go ahead and integrate their current CI system, their continuous integration systems, or CD systems into our product. We actually have it so that if you're building anything, you create a build object or build info. So whenever you create a software build, you're consuming the third-party transitive dependencies out of Artifactory. You're constructing the actual build. And our build objects, what we have, are actually capturing all the information. How was it built? What were the system variables that were involved in it, such as did you forget to, did you leave the debug flag on again? We can capture that information. It also correlates and adds all the build dependencies so you can map what dependencies are being utilized in that product. This is amazing for auditability and traceability. It also allows you to track these builds through their cycle. Because of the build object, you can actually use our promotion API, and one of the features we have is called release history. And in there, you can have dev, QA, staging, and production, and add as much arbitrary metadata as you want to represent the stage of the SDLC of this build, so you know as much information about it. You can move and copy builds, and it's also bi-directional. You can publish information, and information can come out of Artifactory to supplement it. So if you have more contingency-style builds, where you have dependencies that depend on other dependencies, you can find out whether or not that information is stored in Artifactory and use that as a way to manipulate the next build you're creating. And what's great is with the build integration, you can see all your builds, the published artifacts with it, dependencies used for it, how it was built in the build environment. Are there any unused artifacts that are associated to this? What's the scope of it? When you're searching for it, you can actually see that. And once again, it's also bidirectionally linked between them. So we create, with our build integrations, a link to the Artifactory server, and we also capture the data from the CI server in Artifactory to link it back. So this way, you don't ever have a doubt on where was it built, how was it built, because you have a direct link back to it. On top of that, it's actually stored in its own style repository. It's stored as a JSON object. It's accessible via the UI, the REST API, or our CLI tool. Once again, you can see all the information about how it was built, where it was built, what was used to build it. You can even diff builds. How many other products do you know out there can even diff things like Docker images? Were they built differently? This helps expedite time for things like root cause analysis, reducing the amount of time and effort it takes corporations to find out if there's differentiations between the builds they created. Because in most cases, there are changes, and if something does go wrong, it gives you the ability to go look more rapidly so that you can address it more rapidly. And also, you can get information. What licenses were being used? Are there any issues that might have happened? You can create release notes around it. All this information is stored in Artifactory by default. And we have integrations for all major CI players that are out there, everything from Jenkins. We have our JFrog pipelines, which we discussed in a separate video, but GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, you name it. All the major CI partners out there have some form of integration with the JFrog platform, and you can utilize that and leverage that from everything from the build dependencies, capturing how it was created, and all the additional information around those build objects, which actually make the organization that much better, much more resilient, much more robust, and also to easily addressable issues. Thank you.